our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Well, today's project, and it's going to take a couple of days to get this one done, is a Broyhill Emphasis dining set from 1964. I picked this dining set up last week. It consists of this table, which is in walnut and walnut veneer with a single leaf, 8 chairs, and a small china cabinet. Broyhill Emphasis was one of the Broyhill Premier lines back in the day. I believe the Premier lines came out in the late 1950s, may have gone through the early 70s, I'm just not sure. This one is stamped, so it's to believe it's from 1964. Other Premier lines are the Broyhill Brasilia, the Broyhill Saga, models like that. Regardless, this table needs to be completely refinished. We've got touch-ups to do on the legs and a little bit of tightening, and then if you can see here is the leaf, and it has some cloudiness from water penetration, some finished chips, and the tabletop is in a little bit worse shape than the leaf is. So what we're going to do is touch up the legs, completely refinish the top, and then we're going to take the chairs, there's 8 of them, one at a time into the shop. We'll strip the seats off of them, make sure all the joints are tight. If they're not, they'll come apart and get re-glued. We'll do touch-ups on the chairs. We'll reupholster the seats, I believe. My wife will make that final call. And then the china cabinet, which is in the other building, the top of the lower portion of that needs to be refinished, and I'll show you as well. This is going to be a relatively lengthy project, probably a couple or 3 days anyways, but it should have some substantial value when it's done. Again, mid-century modern furniture is what's hot right now, and this is an established piece of mid-century modern from Broyhill. The Brasilia is actually a little bit more popular than the Emphasis line, but the Emphasis line, needless to say, is still very desirable. So we're going to make this as pretty as we can while still keeping it age appropriate with whatever patina we can preserve, and we'll try to get this ready for sale. So when we come back, I'll bring you into the other building, I'll show you the chairs, and I'll show you the china cabinet. And here are the chairs. We have 1 armchair and 7 regular chairs. And you can see that beautiful mid-century modern styling, that 1960s design. But these chairs here have the rounded legs, as you can see. And I believe in some of the other lines they weren't tapered, they were square. I prefer the ones on this. The upholstery on this is actually quite nice. It's in great shape, and it's good fabric, but I just don't think it's appropriate to the chair. I've seen these done in a black vinyl, and I think they look spectacular, so we'll probably wind up refinishing these. Over here is the base of the china cabinet. It's relatively modest in size, which actually is good because large china cabinets are really a liability. That's the styling of the Emphasis line. The Brasilia line, as you probably know, has that arch in it, which is really, really pretty. But if you look at this, you can see that this top here has been damaged. The finish is gone. This top needs to be refinished, and the top of the china cabinet goes from about here to about here. The top of the china cabinet is underneath this blanket because it's glass, and we all know how I am about glass. I keep it very well protected because I normally don't do too well with it. But that's in pretty good shape, so that doesn't really need much of anything. Inside the case of the china cabinet, the piece is marked Emphasis, and it says Broyhill Premier and the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. So this is the original label, which is still affixed, and we'll make sure that we preserve that, obviously. Also, the original hardware to mount the top and the bottom together is still in the drawer. But there's the inside of the cabinet, the inside of the doors, and the outside of the doors. Let's get to work. stripped. That's the worst part of the job over as far as I'm concerned. You can see that the walnut veneer is in pretty good shape. It looks like an awful lot of the grain sealer that was applied is still in the grain, but we're probably going to have to grain seal this before we finish it. You can see we've got some pits in here that were probably filled in by the factory. We'll have to fill them. Over here is a chip that we'll have to take care of. And there's a couple of more nicks and dings that I found as I pulled the finish off. You know, as you saw, the color was applied not to the wood, but applied in the finish. It's a raw umber brown. The Perfect Brown by Mohawk is a pretty good match. It's a little bit lighter than the straight raw umber. The leaf is here. Good little hint for any of you guys that have to hold stuff on its edge is just to put a hand screw on it. It'll act like a clamp on the table. And that came out pretty good. So what we're going to do is just let this dry overnight. We'll get back on it and get it sanded, make a decision on grain filler, get it sealed up, and shoot some color on it, match it to the legs, and she'll be done. So we're on our way. Hey, we're back on this table. We're ready to fill in some of the chips and dings. I'll show you what we're going to do and we'll get to work. And you can see here we've got some pits that have to be filled in. There, there, and there. And then if you look up here, each one of those pieces of blue tape marks another small little pit in the wood. And that's just a chip in this piece of veneer that coats the side, and it comes up onto the tabletop. Because the substrate under here is damaged, I'm not going to try to do this with a piece of veneer. I'm going to use some walnut colored epoxy and repair that with this. So I'll set you up and we'll get to work filling these in. we got 2 coats of sealer on this table now, and she's been sanded and wiped off, so now we're ready for color. Now, as you know, there's a number of ways to put color on a piece of furniture. You can use dye on the raw wood. You can use a wiping stain on the raw wood. You can spray the color on over a top coat, which is what we're going to do, and then you can also glaze over a top coat. Glaze being a thicker, more pigmented, almost like a wiping stain that goes on over top coat, and then you top coat over that, and it gives you some depth and opacity and things. You've seen me use glaze before. Why do you choose a particular way of coloring a piece of wood? Well, generally it's for control. We know that this desk was colored at the factory by using colored lacquers. In other words, the way we're going to do it today. If I strip this table and then stained it with a wiping stain, that's it. Whatever color that comes out, I'm stuck with it. And what I want to do is try to match the color, and by spraying it on, it gives me a lot of control. The major drawback to spraying color on is you're going to use up a lot of lacquer thinner. That stuff is, you know, anywhere between $12 and $15 a gallon, and I'll probably use a half a gallon of that. But you know what? It's worth it in this case. So it's a more advanced method of getting color on a piece of furniture, but there's no big secret to it. We're just going to take some dye stain, which is an acetone-based product. In this case, we're going to use Mohawk's Perfect Brown. A little bit of lacquer so it sticks, and a lot of lacquer thinner. The lacquer thinner will carry the material onto the table. It's been sealed with 2 coats of lacquer sanding sealer. It will melt in, it'll attach. The lacquer will give you enough of a bite without any build. The color's there, and the lacquer thinner will evaporate off. We call flashing off. And the lacquer thinner will go away, and the color will lay on top. Right now, if we use the analogy of colored glass, we have 2 sheets of perfectly clear glass that give us a nice smooth finish. Now we're going to put some color on that glass. When that color dries, we'll shoot a coat of lacquer. That'll be a new coat of glass that we can adjust the color on. And then eventually we'll top coat it with 2 or 3 clear layers of glass, or 2 or 3 layers of top coat, and then the color will be where it needs to be. We're going to use the legs as a guide, although I've got them wrapped in plastic, and I'm going to bring one of the chairs in so I can also kind of keep an eye on the chair and make sure that we get it matched the chair. So when we come back, I'll mix up the color. I'll show you what it looks like on a stick, and then we'll get to work. It'll usually take 3, sometimes 4 coats to get the color the way you want it, but that's the way it goes. So I'll stick with us and we'll show you how we do that. And I brought one of the chairs in to show you the current color difference between the chairs and the table. That'll give you an idea of how much brown we need to get into this table. And then if you look down here, you can see the difference between the table legs and the chair legs. Now, granted, this is 50-year-old furniture and there's sun bleach issues and all, but generally with a table, you want the legs to be a little bit darker. And when your eye catches a table, you normally see the match between the top and the chairs. That's what you'll see when you're looking at the table. So we're going to go with the chair as our guide for how dark we want this table to be. And I'll give you a quick demonstration of how I mix this color up. Those of you that are chemists and engineers, you might want to tune out now because this is exceptionally imprecise. I just do it based on my experience and based on my eye. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to take just a little bit of lacquer thinner, of lacquer. And again, the only purpose of this lacquer is to give it a little bite, a little stick-to-itiveness. And then I've got my Mohawk Perfect Brown. That's the second bottle, by the way. And I'll pour that in as much as I think we need. And again, you'd rather be light than dark because it's a whole lot easier to deal with it when it's light than when it's dark. And then we'll fill the gun up the rest of the way with some lacquer thinner. for those of you that are trying to figure out costs and if you want to do this, I think I get this for about 13 bucks a gallon. Walmart tends to be the cheapest. I've bought it in 5-gallon containers before from my supplier. I can get it down to about 10 bucks a gallon there. This is $21 for a quart. It's $40 for a gallon. I tend to buy the quarts because I don't really want to have issues storing all the dye. And then lacquer is about, I think I pay about $36 a gallon for lacquer. And it's about the same for the lacquer sanding sealer. So that'll give you an idea what the quality stuff is. Okay, we're mixed up. Let me stir this up. And hopefully you can see this, and we'll come back and make sure you can. But that's about the amount of color that will go on. Now the more we put on, the darker it'll get, of course, but I think that's going to be a good place for us to start. Okay, I'm going to mask up and I'll set you aside, open all the doors and fans, and I'll turn the volume off on the video and we'll get started coloring this top. Okay, I hope you can see the difference in color between this and the leaf. And it's pretty subtle, but if you look now against the chair, we're getting really, really close. So it looks like probably 2 coats is all we're going to need of this color to pull a little bit closer to the chair. So we'll keep at it, but I just wanted to let you see how the color changes as we apply this dye stain. Well, hey, we're back. It's been, I think, 2 days since we videoed the beginning of this project. Since you've been gone, I just continued to shoot color coats and lacquer coats, and between lacquer coats it was wet sanded and rubbed down and wet sanded and rubbed down. I shot 2 final coats of lacquer this morning. I also did a final light color coat of burnt umber dye stain to try to get a little bit more brown, a little bit less red into the tabletop. And then I rubbed it out, a preliminary rub out with steel wool and wet sanding to get to this really nice satin sheen that we have here. Tomorrow, after the lacquer has a chance to harden some more, I'll probably do another bit of a rub out with some wax or some wool lube and get it really, really smooth. I'll bring it in here so you can see how we did. We are. Hopefully the light's working for you. And there we go. And that's to match the legs. I'm real happy with that. The light tones of the legs match the tabletop. Remember, the legs should be a little bit darker than the tabletop. And that looks good. And then if we bring in a chair, I think we're in really good shape. So listen, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Tabletops can be a real challenge. You want to make sure you get them smooth as silk before you start laying on finish, because this one I think is probably 7 feet long, and boy, they'll show every little wrinkle and dent. They'll drive you insane. Hope you learned a little bit about coloring, a little bit about lacquering, and I will bring you back for another video when we start to work on the chairs. A little bit of touch up, a little bit of chair repair, joints and all. But we are well on our way, and I think someone's going to be just tickled pink to have this beautiful set back in their home. All right, best regards from just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next video.